Welcome, my darling pretties, to our Beyond the Dawn of Business podcast for pretty, empowered female entrepreneurs. It's time to step into your power, pretties. Lift each other, support the squad, and choose a life filled with the autonomy and freedom to live your dreams. I'm your host, Dawn Beth, owner and founder of Beyond the Dawn digital business brand and agency. My coffee is hot and my eyelashes are on, so we are ready to go. Hello and welcome to this episode. I am so delighted to bring this episode to you because this one is our Halloween special. So happy Halloween, happy All Hallows Eve. I hope whatever you're doing today, you're going to have a spooktacular day. I know Halloween isn't like a holiday that everybody celebrates, especially in the UK. Lots of people think that it is just about consumerism and all of that. And I must admit that it is one of my favourite times of year. I never miss an excuse to, celebrate and live joyfully. And I don't need much of an excuse. So give me an opportunity to dress up and be silly and I'm there. But today I'm going to use this theme as an excellent opportunity for us to talk about some of the things that fill us with dread as entrepreneurs and business owners. Because I think that's really interesting as a topic for us to consider and think about and focus on, because so much of what we do is led by fear. Like we make decisions from a place of fear, which is often not the best policy, We think about things in our business based on risk. We worry. We have all of these different elements to our kind of emotional state, to the way that we mentally strategize and what it is that we actually choose to take action with based on fears and withholding, a set of beliefs and just basically limiting ourselves based on risk. And that's something that's really important for us to discuss. So I'm going to pick out a couple of the main ones that me and my clients have spoken about probably semi-regularly over the last 12 to 18 months. So the first big business horror story is, what do you do when you take on a client and then you and that client are not a good fit? That's a big one. That's happened to a couple of my clients over the last 12 months. It's certainly something I've experienced in the past. Anyone who has heard my story of the Christmas of 2019 will know occasionally when you are working with lots and lots of people, you will get past the discovery stage, you will get into a relationship with somebody and then find out that actually it's not the right thing. So what do you do in that circumstance? What do you do when that happens? The first thing that I would urge you to do is to recognize the learnings that are available to you. Like, are there some red flags that you overlooked? It's a little bit like, getting into any relationship. Can you see that moment when actually there was something there that would have given you an indication that this might not be the right thing? Did you overlook it? Did you bypass it? Did you tell yourself it would be totally fine because? And are those areas there for you? If they are, then the way you perform an exorcism of this particular horror story is you take the learning from the situation, okay? If you're in a situation where you can salvage what you're actually doing for that client to a good standard and still deliver what it is you were hired to deliver, then absolutely do. If for whatever reason, and there are hundreds, that you actually cannot do that, then you have to find a way to lovingly walk away, find a way that you can learn from the experience and not go through it again. But the most important way for you to have an exorcism of this particular business horror is to recognize that these things will sometimes happen. And you don't have to lay blame at anybody's door. It doesn't have to be your fault. It doesn't have to be their fault. Sometimes it's just not right. And there are multitudes of different reasons why it's not right. Lots of them will be completely out of your understanding and control. The ones that are within your understanding and control, you need to make sure that you have that as a learning. Okay, have that as a learning. Make sure that you know what it is that you can take from this that will make you stronger in the future. When you're in that situation, and I remember speaking to one of my clients so clearly back in February, when you're in that situation and it's hurting your heart and you're feeling like a failure and your imposter syndrome is coming up and you're telling yourself all the awful things that we tell ourselves when we're under stress, strain or fear, that, yeah, I'm not good enough for this. I can't do this anymore. I can't believe I made this mistake. This is just evidence that this is not going to work for me. I really would love for you to first recognize what you're doing in terms of that negative bias in the way that you're talking to yourself and flip it around and look for evidence as to why this needed to happen. Okay, why did this need to happen? What did it teach you? What will it change for you in the future, which will be helpful? I promise you, there is always a lesson in these things, and it feels so crummy when you're in the weeds. But when you get out of it and you can actually recognize all the good stuff that came from it, it will make you stronger. It will make you stronger. We manifest lessons as well as gifts. Okay, so a lot of the horror stories that we're going to talk about today, you know, if you are one of the people who believes in the energies of the universe, manifestation, and the way in which you can higher your vibration to connect to what it is that you actually want and create those internal structures that create your external structures, then you might look at this and go, oh my gosh, I totally manifested this. Why would I manifest this? You've got to remember that you're going to have the opportunity to prove you are who you're telling the universe you actually are. And that's where these lessons come from. The second thing that I really want you to consider is that every single person who's owned a business, who you will probably look at and consider to be successful, will have had a situation of a similar nature at some point. At some point, you will have a situation that is not ideal. Okay? Businesses cannot run when they are constantly taking on new clients, constantly, increasing their incomes, growth, doing all of that good stuff. You can't do that without the numbers, right? You can't do that without the clients. The more clients you take on, and it's not actually necessarily like how many you have either, but just know the maths is there to prove that by the law of averages, it will eventually happen. It might happen on your first day of running your business. It might happen on your 222nd day. It doesn't matter. At some point it will happen, and at some point you'll have to have a way to handle it. But give yourself the exorcism, exercise that feeling of this is a business situation. This isn't a personal situation. This is a business situation. This situation has not gone to plan. This situation isn't ideal. I mean, come on. Life doesn't always go to plan, right? And this is something I'm going to learn from. I'm going to thrive from. I'm going to lay no blame anywhere, not on myself, not on the other people, not on anybody that I've worked with, not on my team. Yeah? I'm not going to lay any blame. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on, and I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to continue to grow and flourish and know that sometimes this happens and it's okay. Okay? Second business horror story. What do you do if you have arranged a fantastic situation, be it an event or a workshop or an online launch or any of these things that we are cultivating and putting together all of the time? Like, what happens if you create that and then something goes wrong? This is a horror story, right? Your laptop won't open. Your internet connection fails. You turn up to the workshop and you've forgotten everybody's goodie bags. Like, what do you do in that situation? This is a business horror story. People have paid tickets, or they've signed up to join, or you've been talking about it for months, and this is the moment everybody is expecting you to be there. What do? I can give you two examples of this. The first example is that so many people do our audience attraction signature course now, and we do it annually, we do it virtually, we do it live every single year around February, March time. And the first time that I actually ran it, I did it as an in-person full day kind of VIP experience. It was audience attraction, 8 hours of audience attraction. It was only 8 modules at the time, with a lovely lunch in the middle. I hired this beautiful room close to where I live, and I invited my clients to come and spend the day with me physically. And I had all of my slides prepared for all the modules. I had all of the things that I was going to show them. I wanted to show them, physically show them how to do their own market research, hashtag research, how to make graphics, how to plug them in with the scheduler ad, all sorts of amazing things I was going to show them on the day. I turned up and it was very nerve-wracking. It was like the first in-person day I'd done of this particular kind. I'd done lots of other bits and pieces, but this was like my new baby, my new course. I'd actually given audience attraction as a one-to-one offering before this. So it wasn't technically like super new, but it was a new experience. And my laptop did not work. It did not work. I could not get the thing to switch on. It was absolutely horrendous. I cared about the women in the room. It was a very intimate group of women, a fabulous group of women who I had really strong, both professional and personal relationships with. And I was so embarrassed. I was so filled with shame, and I could feel myself getting stressed. I could feel myself, having that pressure. And I had to take a moment to kind of evaluate the actual situation and not allow myself to go into an emotional spiral. I had a couple of choices, in truth. And in positive psychology, we call this pathway thinking. And this is how you do an exorcism to this business horror story. Okay, you have to think to yourself in that moment, before I spiral into the pit of despair, before I give myself a ridiculous hard time for not checking before I arrived here that my laptop would switch on, what can I actually do to correct this in this moment? So there were a couple of options. The ladies that were in the room had brought their own laptops. And for the first part of this session, they didn't actually need to take any actions on their own laptops to be able to perform the training on their side of things. But I did need a laptop that would connect to the internet to show them what I needed to show them and demonstrate to them. So I could have asked any of the amazing women in the room if I could have borrowed their laptop for a short period of time to be able to provide the slides. Okay. Another option for me, which was very lucky, was that I actually was very close to home. And my sister, who is amazing, has been in my business since 2019, actually was just around the corner. So instead of panicking, I sent my sister Susan a text message and said, "Hey, I'm having an absolute nightmare. Can I please borrow your laptop?" And she was amazing. She came, she made sure that I had everything I needed. She made sure I could log on. She dropped off the laptop for me and she literally saved the day. But it could have gone very much in a different way. What we ended up doing was having a lovely 15 to 20 minute chat about everything that we had going on in business, which actually informed the way that I could present the session later on in the day. Then we had a little bit of breakfast and started talking practically about content in a way that I had planned to do later in the day, but we just switched it around. We just changed it around. Okay. Having the opportunity to recognize, boom, this isn't ideal. This isn't the perfect scenario that I had in my head. However, that doesn't make it a write-off. I still have an opportunity here to do what I came here to do and to have a really successful day doing it. It's not going to look exactly like I wanted it to. It's not going to be this perfect framed thing that I had imagined it would be. However, it's still going to be blooming fabulous. And, in the terms of things that can go wrong, it's actually quite a small issue. If you have a way to combat it, then combat it. Rather than spiraling and getting yourself into that negative state, perform the exorcism. Okay, so I'm not prepared right now. The situation I have before me is not ideal. Use that pathway thinking. What can we do to change this? Do we need to change the way the session runs? Do I need to politely ask to use somebody else's tech for a couple of hours? Do I need to run to Curry's and buy a new laptop? Because that also would have been an option had I have not had other options to explore first. There's almost always something that you can do that will support you in being able to just really find a way to continue to thrive in that circumstance. So, this next business horror story is one that I was sent by a client who has given me permission to use it. So thank you very much. You know who you are. And basically, this is a horror story for those of us who are in fast expansion. But if you're not in fast expansion right now, please do still stick with me and listen, because I feel like this is a lesson that you will be able to keep in your back pocket for when you get to that point. If you get to that point, depending on what it is that you want to do with your business and whether it, this level of growth actually sparks joy in you. So this wonderful client of mine, absolutely beautiful soul, who I've been working with for probably maybe 1.5 to 2 years now, she has created this fantastic opportunity in her business that she's been growing and she's been thriving with for some time for other people to invest and also take just a fantastic opportunity to share in what is a really thriving situation. So over the last 12 months, she has been chatting to and arranging and planning a massive growth spurt in her business. Like, it's a massive expansion. She's had investors. She has nearly filled her roster for investors. And one of the investors was incredibly keen to get on board with ideas around how they frame this expansion, how they kind of like push this so that it works even faster, which she was totally on board with. So after some time and some meetings and some situations where they're getting the cash in and the cash flow right, and they know where they want to spend their money and they know what they want to do, they have created this wonderful expansion that has allowed them to hire people into their business. It's allowed them to purchase a property. It's allowed them to purchase some company cars, and all of the kit and caboodle that is required for her particular business. Okay, she's in the catering industry, so anybody who knows about kind of high level catering, you're going to know that the equipment alone is not cheap for that kind of arena. And we're talking about catering equipment that would service large galas, really massive events, not just necessarily your kind of like personal weddings, but actually quite large 500 to 1,000 people events. So it's massive. It's massive. So she gets to this part in her business where she's got all of these investors. And she's spent a decent chunk of the money. She's hired team, and she's really in the middle of what is a 24-month process. She's probably somewhere, let me think about what month she probably would have been in, maybe 9 or 10 months into a 24-month project. And it's getting to the point where the investors need to relook at their next kind of injection of cash. And one of her biggest investors pulls out. Can you feel the dread? Can you feel the dread for my amazing client and friend when she receives an email from an investor who has pledged to be involved for a certain length of time, contracted to be involved for a certain length of time, everything's been agreed, everything's been signed, dotted I's, crossed T's, all of that good stuff. has said, actually, this isn't going to work for me. I'm pulling what I've pledged. The whole framework of what you've built there for your business now hangs in the balance, based on the fact that that cash will not be available to you in the next coming months the way that you thought that it would be. Like, for us as business owners, it doesn't really get much more scary than that, because when you have protected yourself, when you have frameworks in place, you have contracts, you have agreements, and you feel like you have that solid foundation from which you can then use that to grow your business. And if you're listening right now and you have a small business that you are making a little bit of money in and you're reinvesting pretty much every penny in, please know that it is exactly the same as that, but just on a larger scale. So whereas you might make £300 and spend £250, these bigger companies are dealing with the exact same feeling, only it might be 300,000 and 250,000 being spent or whatever. Like, that's not an accurate figure. I've just put that out the sky, but it's the same thing. It's just on a larger scale, right? But imagine that situation. So how do you create an exorcism of this horror in your business when something like that happens to you? How do you do that? Well, first and foremost, if somebody has signed a contract with you, they have agreed to the terms and conditions of that situation, okay? It's as simple as that. The contract will tell you what to do next. In the event of this contract being breached, what do we do? Okay, go and seek legal advice. Go and do what you need to do. Like, if you decide to do something that is outside of what the contract states, then that is your choice. But at the first and foremost, you want to be looking at that contract and speaking to legal eagles and getting some advice. Try to take the emotion out of it. This is a business situation. I hate saying that it's not personal. My favorite movie of all time is You've Got Mail. And I think I've probably said this before, but there's a part where Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks are speaking, and he says to her, because he's just put her business out of business, he says to her, it's business, it's not personal. And she says, it's not personal to you, but it's personal to me, and business should be personal. Like, it should start with being personal at the very least, or something similar to that. And I totally agree with Meg Ryan. Shout out to you if you're listening, Meg. It is personal for us. We do care about our businesses. They are digital love childs that we have, nurtured from a tiny, tiny seed into something. And it is hard. You do have the power to make those decisions should you need to. But you also need to think about, like, if somebody is renegated on what they agreed with you, then they've put you in a position where you may have to renegade on what you've agreed with other people. And that's not fair. Like, think about justice, think about fairness, think about not putting yourself as the doormat, because if you're an Enneagram 2 like me, if you're a people pleaser or a reformed people pleaser, your first thing might be, oh my gosh, no conflict, no stress, no worry, I'm just going to retreat, I'm just going to back down. That's not always the best business strategy. Like, think about fairness, speak to some legal people, get some advice. I really love, if I ever have any kind of legal situation, it's incredibly rare, thank you. I'm holding my hands in prayer right now in gratitude, so massively rare. But like, I don't even deal with that stuff. Once it gets to that stage, if it ever gets to that stage, I pass it over to the experts who are bolted onto my team, and I never look at it again. They make the decisions, because it takes the emotion out of it, and it looks at it purely from a business point of view, which is the way that you should do it. But equally, how you perform an exorcism for this business horror is perhaps looking at the situation slightly differently. Like, okay, so in reality, that investor is no longer gonna support us, okay? And, I've passed that over to my legal eagles. They're going to deal with that. We're not going to worry about that right now. Somebody else is going to handle that for us. Again, if you're a smaller business and you don't have a legal eagle, may I lovingly suggest that you go and follow my friend Lucy Legal. You'll find her on Instagram. She is by far one of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met. She helps me create my contracts and all of my bits and pieces along with my solicitor. And, she will probably tell you, for those of you that are doing it all the time, to have a solicitor kind of on retainer as well. But Lucy is an amazing person to follow if you're just starting out as well, because she has a wonderful set of templates and things that can help you get started with this side. But I want you to think about, once that bit's all sorted, I want you to think about it differently. Like, okay, so this person is no longer going to be supporting us in this way, but that doesn't mean that my plans have changed. Like, my client's plans have not changed. She still has other investors, right? She still has her whole team. She still has the bookings from her clients coming in that need to be fulfilled. So this one knock cannot be the thing that lets the whole thing fall down, right? You can't allow yourself to get into that feeling of, oh my gosh, this is the thing that's going to do me in. Yes, it's a business horror story. Yes, it's something that we all wish didn't happen. Yes, when it happens, that sinking feeling in your stomach of being let down and disappointed by somebody. Absolutely. Recognizing that you might have some difficult decisions ahead of you. Absolutely. But this is the moment where you really need to tap into your kind of entrepreneurial spirit, your emotional resilience when it comes to your business, and recognize that there is another way. You don't have to focus on the lack of this situation. Perform an exorcism by recognizing how you will replace that investment, or how you will replace that income. Instead of focusing on what's been lacking, on what's been lost, how do you replace it? How do you recoup it? Are you going to go back to the drawing board and recruit another investor? Like, absolutely. Instead of focusing on the bad situation, flip it around, focus on the things that you can do. Again, pathway thinking. For all of the exorcisms of these horrible business situations, you'll notice that I'm relying quite heavily on positive psychology. And that's because positive psychology is just a beautiful tool for all of us that are in this entrepreneurial and business space, because it's not always easy, but there is almost always something that you can do. So, one of the other things that I find quite difficult is when you have a situation in your business that negatively affects your sales. Okay? And when I say a situation that negatively affects your sales, I'm not talking about your demeanor or your energy. I know I talk about that a lot, about how you need to approach sales energy, but I'm talking about when it's absolutely totally out of your control. Okay? Over the last few weeks, many of my clients have been in launch, and we have been supporting just some of the most amazing people to get their valued products and services out there into the world. Some of them, it's been their first launches. Some of them are seasoned pros, and it's been like a regular launch that's been booked in. But for those of them that were using a system called Kartra, they've had a really, really tough time. Now, if you are a user of Kartra, you might be sat listening and nodding your head right now. But a business horror story that happened, and this is a real tale that's happened recently, is that in the middle of quite a lot of people's launches, and it doesn't really matter what time of year that this happens, when something like this happens, somebody somewhere is getting affected, right? There's that many users on Kartra that it wouldn't actually matter. It's not like, oh, it happened in September, which is high launch season. I mean, it is high launch season, but equally, it wouldn't matter if it had happened, say, for instance, in August. There still would have been a massive percentage of people who would be affected. And what happened was Kartra had some technological issues that was stopping people from making payments. Now, if you've listened to me previously talk about sales psychology and talking about giving people the easiest, fastest possible route to purchase with you, so when they've made that decision to do so, they follow it all the way through rather than leaving it in an abandoned cart, which is, again, it's a psychological behavior that all of us at some point have gone to purchase something, gotten distracted, and then when we go back to it and we decide whether we're going to do it or not, we actually think, now I won't bother now because the moment's passed. So we're trying not to allow people to get into that, oh, the moment's passed, I've forgotten what it was that I actually was interested in this because, and I can't remember now why I was so bothered, so I'm just going to let it go. Because in that moment when we choose to buy the thing, we very much have a clear motivation. It's just that it goes into a different level of our priority when a bit of time has passed. So Kartra had this issue, and people who were clicking couldn't actually put their payment details in, or if they were putting the payment details in, it wasn't allowing the sale to go through, which for us as businesses is a horror story, right? Imagine having every other element of your business set up, every other element of your business perfect. In terms of your launch, in terms of who you're selling this to, you're on the precipice of a fantastic launch. And then just at the moment when all of your fantastic clients go to buy, they cannot purchase. That is a business horror story. And it happened, unfortunately, to a lot of our people. We had a lot of people in our emails saying, Dawny, like, can your team help? Do we know what the problem is? Although we do help people with their Kartras in terms of building funnels and sales pages and things, we actually do not understand the back of house coding of Kartra in terms of what it is that actually went wrong with the tech fault. We were in the same place as a lot of our clients in terms of trying to figure out what was actually occurring so that we could relay that information to our people. But we very quickly realized that there was an opportunity to support our people here so that they had a less negative effect from this tech fault, which was it was totally out of their control, than they would have if they didn't have a solution. So one of the things that we provided was the opportunity to create for them in a different platform a payment button. And I'm going to tell you the two systems that we used to allow that to happen. Actually, there was 3 systems, but there was 2 main ones that people chose. So what we did was quite quickly for one of our clients, we stopped people being redirected to the payment cart within Kartra, and the payment button connected instead to a PayPal pay link button. Okay, so that was one of the things. One of the things I will say is if you ever choose to use that system as part of a bolt-on solution like we did for this exorcism of this horrible business horror story, you do need to know that PayPal has different fees to like Stripe, or like have a look at the fee structure beforehand so you know what the difference is in terms of what you're going to lose. The client that chose the PayPal was far more willing to pay the extra fees to PayPal to get the sales and not lose all of the work that she'd done in the lead up to her launch than lose all of that potential income, but equally lose the momentum of her launch whilst Kartra was not working. For another client, we used a fantastic system called ThriveCart. And for that one, we just whipped up a quick sales page that looked the same as Kartra, and we just took the whole thing away from Kartra. Okay. Another payment system that I would suggest for something like this is Go Cardless. If you haven't used Go Cardless yet, go check it out. It's pretty sexy. We love it. There's lots of different ways that you can create payment plans on Go Cardless, and we find it really, really helpful. And basically what we did was a very, very quick fire bolt-on solution. Now, if you have people around you that understand the digital tech side of business and have a good handle of all the different systems that are out there, and believe you me, we do not know them all. We are constantly learning and training all of the different systems. We just got to the point where we're trained up on FEA Create. I don't know if any of you guys will be on Carrie Green's new FEA Create system, but we're trained up on that now, so we'll be able to help our clients with that, which is really good. But we do have to go out there. We do have to learn which systems are working, which systems are available, and that gives us a bird's eye view of the overall situation of the entire kind of digital sphere, and allows us to be able to create bolt-on solutions. You're never going to have control of every single piece of tech, but if you have an awareness of other areas to do this, you can get round that business horror story and find a way to make it a success.
Now, did some of our clients lose a couple of sales whilst that was going on? Absolutely. Was it stressful? Absolutely. Did they have to go back through the people who perhaps had clicked to buy, and didn't actually manage to do it in order to try and bring them over to the different system? Absolutely. And that's difficult if you don't know of the people who had done that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was quite lucky for our clients, because when we help people set up launches, we help them set up the metrics of those launches, which means that a lot of the time people will know a rough variation of the people who are interested, who are clicking. They'll have some sort of communication going with them already, which makes something like this far more easy to control. But with bigger launches, when there's lots of audience members, there's lots of clients, it's far more difficult to know if Sheila, for instance, tried to purchase and hasn't, unless you can track that on your website and know exactly who it is that's attempted to purchase, which Kartra was not giving us that information, then, you will lose some people. But the only thing you can do is you can go back to the mediums from which you communicated, and make sure that people know that is now fixed. What was nice about the situation was that there was a collective, almost outcry all over the place that Kartra wasn't working, which meant that the clients who were attempting to buy got the news very quickly that Kartra wasn't performing the way it normally does. And I think a lot of people were primed for being given a different solution, which made it easier to get people back on board. But that is, again, another way of pathway thinking. This situation isn't ideal. How do I get to the end point, rather than focusing on the fact that this hasn't worked, rather than wallowing in that emotional state, that hit that we take? Like, okay, this is not cool. I'm really not happy with how this situation is happening to me. And I'm grateful that it's not something worse. And how am I going to overcome it? How am I going to actually create a solution for this? And what should I be grateful for in this moment? Like, you might not expect to be sat at the end of a very busy launch being grateful for PayPal, right? But be grateful that there are more than one ways to achieve this goal. And that, especially if you have the support around you, you have somebody that you can connect with and say, hey, Dawny, can I have an opinion, please? This is my problem. This is what I need to happen. How do we do this? Then lean on those supports. Be grateful for your business friends, for the people that you're in free groups with that you can ask support, for the free resources that are available to us on the internet. Like, all of these things assist us in being able to find different solutions. So this has been a bit of a longer episode than I expected, but I hope you have enjoyed it. And I hope you can maybe apply some of the exorcisms to your own business horror stories. Because essentially the main thing that I want you to go away with from this episode is knowing that business is amazing. It offers you beautiful, wonderful opportunities that you will not get when you're not in this particular situation. It gives so much. However, you do have to work at it, okay? You know this. This is not brand new information. You do have to work at it. You do have these situations that are less than ideal. And quite frankly, these are the things that really give us kind of the motivation to keep going and know that actually this isn't the end. This is not the end. I'm not going to allow this to be the end. I have total control of this situation and I'm going to find a solution. I've become accustomed to calling my membership, the pro members, I've started calling it the No Quit Club. And this is one of the reasons why this, kind of term has come from it. It's because when we're together and we have that moment of something kind of giving us a WWE smackdown, sorry for the wrestling reference, it's good to have other people around us to remind us not to quit. Because sometimes all you actually need to do in that moment is hold on.
If you're loving our Pretty podcast, come on over to Social Pretties, our online safe house and sisterhood community. It's a safe space where female entrepreneurs connect and thrive in a warm, welcoming fold of pretty amazing women. You'll find an easy redirect in the description, and I can't wait to see you in there. As depending on where you're listening right now, we would love it if you would click subscribe or follow so that you can be the first to know when our new podcasts come out.